You know that feeling when you're trying to explain something, maybe something a bit complex, and the words just, well, they're not quite hitting the mark.
Oh, definitely. Or maybe you want to sound, articulate in an email for work.
Exactly. But without sounding like you swallowed a dictionary, all stiff and formal.
Right. Not sounding like you.
We've all been there, I think. Maybe even grabbed a really fancy word hoping to sound smart, and it just kind of fell flat. Or worse.
Yeah. Guilty is charged sometimes.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because that's what this whole deep dive is about today. We're going to explore some practical ways to build up your vocabulary.
And crucially, how to use those more sophisticated words naturally with confidence.
It's a really interesting area because, well, everyone wants to be understood properly, don't they?
Mm-hmm. To get those nuances across clearly. And it doesn't really matter if you're prepping for a test like the TOEFL or just want to communicate better day to day.
Precisely. And our main source for this, our kind of jumping off point, is this really useful YouTube video. It's from the TOEFL test channel.
Okay.
Now, hang on. If you're thinking TOEFL, not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because honestly, the strategies in there are gold for anyone.
Right. The principles are probably universal.
Totally. It gets into building vocabulary in a smart way, looking at essential academic words you actually do hear around.
Mm-hmm.
Some more advanced stuff, and those, all-important linking words that help everything flow.
So taking the logic of test prep and applying it more broadly.
Yes. Think of it like that. We're extracting the best bits, the practical wisdom, and making it work for you, whatever your communication goals are.
And it makes sense because those tests, like TOEFL, they're basically checking if you can handle the kind of language used in academic settings or even professional ones.
Right.
So the skill's understanding a good range of words, using them while they transfer directly.
Absolutely. So our mission here isn't just to, summarize a video. It's to dig into the actual strategies.
Give you things you can actually use.
Yeah, actionable stuff, specific examples you can try out straight away. We want to give you tools to boost your word power without it feeling like this huge, overwhelming task.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Well, let's start right at the beginning. Why bother? Why is having a decent vocabulary actually important?
That's the fundamental question, isn't it? And the video we're drawing from really hammers this home. A strong vocabulary isn't just, window dressing.
It's foundational.
Exactly. Foundational for doing well academically, sure, but also just for communicating clearly in general. They even argue that having a large vocabulary gets you, halfway to a great TOEFL score.
Which kind of makes intuitive sense. If you're constantly getting tripped up by words, either not understanding them when you read or listen, or just struggling to find the right word when you speak or write. It's a massive hurdle.
It really is. Even if your ideas are brilliant and your grammar's solid, if the words aren't there, you're limited.
Yeah, it holds you back.
And the video points out, for anyone aiming really high, say that 100-plus score on TOEFL, you absolutely need to be comfortable with what they call advanced vocabulary.
Those are more complex words.
Yes. The sometimes trickier ones that often make the difference between just good and excellent expression.
Okay, but here's something the video really stresses, and I think this is so key for anyone listening.
What's that?
It's not just about knowing a list of fancy words. That's maybe half the battle, if that.
Right. You have to actually use them properly.
Yes, and naturally. They give this amazing example. Sentence, it's meant to sound smart, but it's just painful. Something like, having diligently engaged in rigorous intellectual pursuits, he assiduously devoted himself to. Oh, it goes on.
Yeah, I remember that bit. Assimilating copious amounts of knowledge pertinent to the impending examination.
It's just, who talks like that? Seriously.
Nobody. And that's the point, isn't it? It shows the huge gap between just knowing words and actually communicating well.
Totally. The simpler ways, like he studied hard for the test and felt confident. Or even just, he crammed and felt ready.
Or clearer, right. And they sound like a real person. Much more authentic.
So the message is, don't just collect impressive words like trophies. Learn to use them, strategically.
Use them to make your point clearer, not to muddy the waters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what kind of words should we focus on? The video breaks it down into a few helpful types.
Yeah, thinking in categories can make it feel a bit more manageable, I think. Gives you a framework.
Okay, first up, academic vocabulary. Now, this isn't necessarily super obscure jargon.
No, not usually.
It's more about the words that pop up again and again in academic texts, but also, frankly, in professional life. The video lists ones like individual, research, consistent, area, regulations, perceived, emphasis, undertake.
Right. You hear those in reports, presentations, even just more formal discussions. They're common, but carry a certain weight.
Yeah, they add a bit of precision, maybe? Like saying individuals instead of just people can sometimes shift the tone slightly.
It can, yeah. Lend a bit more formality or objectivity, useful tools to have.
Okay, so that's academic. Then we get to advanced vocabulary. This is where maybe those complex, tricky words fit in.
The ones that might make you pause.
The video actually starts with a little quiz, asking about words like supercilious, exacerbate, ubiquitous, myriad, zealous.
Right, throwing you in the deep end a bit.
Kind of, but then it goes deeper into 10 specific advanced words. Let's see. Adversely, foster, implement, ubiquitous, thrive, indispensable, affluent, alleviate, lucrative, resurgence.
Okay, quite a list. And these are where you can really start adding nuance, right?
I think so. Like the difference between saying something had a bad effect versus it adversely affected something.
Yeah, adversely feels a bit more specific, like it caused harm or a negative impact.
Let's look at a couple more. Adversely, meaning harmfully or unfavorably. The video example was skipping breakfast can adversely affect your energy level.
Makes sense. Or you could say, the decision adversely affected morale.
Right. More precise than just negatively.
Yeah.
Then foster, like helping something grow.
Like fostering creativity or fostering a good relationship. It implies nurturing it.
Yeah, the video said, the teacher tries to foster a love of reading. It's that active encouragement idea.
Nice one. What else?
Basically putting a plan into action. We hear this a lot in business, don't we?
All the time. Implement a strategy. Implement changes. It's about doing, not just planning.
Then there's ubiquitous, which the video nicely described as meaning everywhere.
Like smartphones.
Exactly. The ubiquitous smartphone. Or the ubiquitous nature of advertising. It paints a much stronger picture than just saying something is very common.
It does. And thrive.
Means to flourish, to do really well, like
Yeah.
the business thrived after the changes, or plants thrive in sunlight. More vivid than just grow well or do well.
Okay, got it. These add a layer of sophistication.
Definitely indispensable, meaning absolutely essential. Can't do without it.
Like coffee in the morning for some people.
Yeah. Huh? Maybe. Or a good dictionary is indispensable for language learners. The video had a good example. Instead of AI is important, it used AI has become an indispensable part of most people's lives.
See, that adds impact. It elevates the statement.
It really does. Let's quickly run through the others. Affluent means wealthy.
An affluent neighborhood.
Right. Alleviate is to make suffering or a problem less severe.
Like alleviating pain or alleviating poverty.
Yep. Lucrative, producing a lot of profit. A lucrative deal, a lucrative career.
Okay. These are good words to know. Many aren't super difficult conceptually, but using them actively, that's the trick.
Exactly. And the last one was resurgence, like a comeback.
A revival, like maybe a resurgence in popularity for classic films.
Perfect example. So that gives you a taste of the advanced category. But the video also mentions idiomatic vocabulary.
Okay, so like idioms, reading cats and dogs.
Well, not just idioms in that sense. It's broader. It's about using those natural phrases and expressions that native speakers use all the time.
Right. The combinations of words that just sound correct, natural.
Yeah, things that make you sound authentic. The video gives examples like pet peeve
Your biggest annoyance.
and soft-spoken.
Someone with a quiet voice. Yeah, those aren't complex words individually, but using the phrase correctly is key for sounding natural, especially when speaking.
Totally. It reminds you that language isn't just single words, but how they fit together.
How they pattern.
And briefly, it touches on campus vocabulary, like academic advisor, prerequisites, dorms.
Domain-specific stuff.
Exactly. Just as an example that, every field or context has its own essential terms you need to know to navigate it.
Makes sense. The words you need depend on where you are and what you're doing.
Okay, so we've got these categories: academic, advanced, idiomatic, even context-specific stuff. But how do we actually learn them? And more importantly, use them. The video had some good practical tips.
Yeah, I liked that it focused on active learning, not just staring at lists.
Right. First suggestion: test yourself. Sounds obvious, maybe, but actively checking if you know the words helps.
Forces recall.
The video even mentions a free PDF resource they offer with the top 100 TOEFL words. We're not linking it here, but the idea is sound. Find good, curated lists relevant to your needs.
Focusing your study definitely makes sense. Target the high frequency or most useful words first.
Another great tip they gave was paraphrasing. Take a simple sentence and try to say the same thing using some of your new vocabulary.
Oh, I like that. Active application.
Yeah. Instead of like, the room was crowded, maybe try the venue was teeming with attendees, or the hall was densely populated, whatever fits the context.
That really helps move words from just passive recognition, understanding them when you hear them, to active use, where you can actually produce them yourself.
Big difference. They also suggested this kind of game while watching their video. Pause when a new word comes up. Try to guess the meaning before they explain it.
Keeps you engaged, right? Active participation.
Yeah. And they use that method to introduce a whole load more words, like condescending, obtain, emerge, crucial, advantageous, frivolous. Let's see, terrestrial, mandatory, escalate, plummet. Quite a few.
Wow, yeah. A rapid fire round? Any that stood out to you there?
Well, condescending is interesting. That attitude of looking down on someone, thinking you're superior.
Yeah, it's a very specific kind of negative behavior.
And frivolous, meaning not serious, maybe unnecessary, like a frivolous purchase or a frivolous lawsuit, the opposite of essential.
Good distinction. What about terrestrial?
Relating to Earth, which, as they pointed out, helps you remember extraterrestrial, is the opposite, not from Earth. Little connections like that can help.
Definitely. Understanding nuances, maybe even where words come from, makes them stickier and helps you use them more precisely.
Absolutely. Okay, so after vocabulary itself, the video takes a really important turn. It focuses on something vital for making sense, whether you're speaking or writing.
Let me guess. Linking words.
You got it. The power of linking words.
The glue that holds it all together. They're kind of the unsung heroes, aren't they?
Totally. They guide your listener or your reader, showing how your ideas connect, like signposts.
Without them, things can sound very choppy.
Exactly. The video proves this really well. They show someone answering a question, I think it was about being outgoing in business.
Right.
The first try has no linking words, just short, separate sentences. And it sounds, well, robotic. Really hard to follow the logic.
Yeah, that lack of connection makes it tough to see how one point relates to the next, even if the ideas themselves are okay.
Then they show a second version. This one uses loads of linking words, but they're all super formal ones, like moreover, nevertheless, to exemplify.
The trying too hard version.
Pretty much. It connects the ideas, sure, but it sounds incredibly unnatural for speaking, like someone reading a very stiff academic paper out loud.
Which really highlights that point about register, doesn't it? Choosing language that fits the situation. Formal linking words are fine for writing, maybe, but often sound weird in conversation.
Definitely. And then there's a third mistake they show. Using linking words kind of randomly or incorrectly.
Sprinkling them in without really thinking.
Yeah. It just sounds forced and, again, unnatural. Like you know you should use them, but you haven't quite grasped how.
So it's not just using them, but using them correctly and appropriately. Makes sense.
The big takeaway from the video on this is, for natural spoken English, aim for maybe 2 or 3 informal linking words per answer or section. Don't overdo it.
Keep it simple, keep it natural.
Right. And then they give this brilliant list broken down by function. First, the basics, but still super useful. First, second, also, but so.
The workhorses.
Yeah.
Simple, clear, effective.
They even show how to build a decent answer just using those. Then for giving examples, for example, to illustrate, like such as.
Useful for clarifying a point.
For contrasting ideas.
Yeah.
Unless, even if, well, even though. They've good example sentences for these two, showing them in context.
Showing opposition or conditions.
For explaining reasons or results. That's why, as a result.
Simple cause and effect.
And for adding another point. Also, on top of that, having them categorized like this makes it much easier to think, okay, what am I trying to do here? Add, contrast, explain.
Yeah, seeing them grouped by function is really helpful, and seeing them in example sentences makes it way clearer how you'd actually slot them into your own speech.
The video also quickly mentions linking words more common in writing, however. For example, for instance, moreover, in addition, therefore, although in contrast. You know the ones.
Right, the more formal options.
And the advice is basically the same. Use them carefully, use them correctly, use them to make things clearer, not just to sound fancy. Don't overdo it.
It's all about enhancing coherence, really, whether speaking or writing. They're tools, and like any tool, you need a bit of skill to use them well.
Okay, so as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, let's quickly boil down the main takeaways for you, the listener.
Right. First big one. Building a wide vocabulary, it's genuinely important for understanding things, for expressing yourself clearly, both in academic stuff and just...
But. And this is a big but. Just knowing words isn't enough. You've got to learn to use them right, accurately, naturally. Don't force those fancy words in where they don't fit.
Second point, thinking about vocab in those different buckets, academic, advanced, idiomatic, that can help you organize your learning and build a more rounded skill set.
Yeah, focus where you need it most, maybe. And finally, don't forget those linking words.
Crucial. Using them well, especially the more informal ones when you're speaking, makes a huge difference to how clear and smooth you sound.
So what can you actually do right now listening to this?
Well, how about actively trying things out?
Good idea. Maybe pick one or two of the advanced words we discussed, like implement or alleviate, and consciously try to use them this week. In an email and a conversation. See how it feels.
Or try that paraphrasing exercise. Take a simple sentence you say often and think, how could I say this with a bit more precision using a word like indispensable or adversely?
Or even just the pause and guess idea when you read or watch something. See a new word, take a second, guess the meaning, then look it up. Makes it more active.
That kind of active experimentation is really how you make new language your own. It moves from theory to practice.
Definitely. Okay, so here's a final thought for you to chew on.
Go on.
Think about this. When you deliberately work on expanding your vocabulary, on choosing your words more carefully, it's not just about sounding better or getting a good score.
What else is it about?
Could it actually sharpen your thinking too? By giving you the tools to grasp and express more subtle ideas, more nuanced perspectives, to engage with complexity on a deeper level.
That's an interesting angle, language shaping thought.
So the question for you is, what specific parts of your own vocabulary, if you focused on improving them, do you think would make the biggest difference? Not just to how you sound, but to how effectively you can think through and share your ideas.
That's a good reflective question, an invitation to think about your own communication and where you want to grow.
Well, thanks for diving deep with us into the world of words today.
Yeah, it's been fascinating.
We really hope the insights we've pulled out will help you communicate with a bit more confidence, a bit more clarity, whatever you're doing.
Welcome to the deep dive. You've given us a fantastic collection of YouTube transcripts all about TOEFL vocabulary, and well, that's exactly where we're heading today. Our mission is to pull out the most effective strategies and the most important vocabulary nuggets to help you build your word power for the TOEFL exam without feeling like you're, drowning in definitions.
Yeah, consider this your guided tour through the world of TOEFL vocabulary. Your sources, they really cover the essential ground. Understanding why a strong vocabulary is just crucial. Breaking down the types of words you need to know.
Right.
Academic, advanced, those useful for campus life. Even some idiomatic expressions. We'll also be looking at clever ways to learn, like using prefixes and, pinpointing key terms in subjects like astronomy, biology, zoology, and history.
Okay.
Plus, we can't forget how linking words kind of tie everything together in your speaking and writing.
Exactly. So for you who wants to learn efficiently and get the real substance, this is designed to, cut through the noise. We're after those core understandings and the aha moments that make TOEFL vocabulary click. Okay, so let's dive in. The very first thing that just jumps out from your sources is just how fundamental vocabulary is for this test.
That's absolutely right. One of the channels you shared made a really strong statement.
Yeah.
A good vocabulary is halfway to achieving a stellar TOEFL score.
Wow, halfway.
Yeah. They emphasize that if your vocabulary is limited, it can really hold you back, potentially capping your scores around, say, 22 or 23 in each section. Doesn't matter how well you know the format or other strategies.
Which really makes you think it's not just a nice to have, it's foundational. And it's not just for the reading passages, is it? Your sources are clear that advanced vocabulary plays a vital role across the board.
Oh, absolutely. Understanding lectures and conversations and listening, expressing yourself fluently when you speak, and of course, writing with precision. It impacts everything. What's interesting, too, is that these sources even offer a kind of quick check.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they throw out words like supercilious, exacerbate, ubiquitous, myriad, and zealous.
Okay, some hefty words there.
Right. And the point is, if any of those feel unfamiliar, it kind of highlights areas where focusing on advanced and academic vocabulary will likely give you the biggest boost.
Because those are the types of words that pop up in the academic stuff on the test.
Exactly. They're common in those contexts.
Okay, so we understand why a strong vocabulary is so important for all parts of the TOEFL. But, one of the videos you shared made a really insightful point that goes beyond just knowing what words mean. It's about how you actually use them.
Precisely. You can't just memorize a whole bunch of impressive sounding words and then try to force them into your speaking or writing.
Right.
It often comes across as unnatural and frankly doesn't necessarily get you a higher score. The example given was this rather convoluted sentence about studying. Very formal, kind of stiff.
Yeah, I remember that. It sounded a bit like someone trying way too hard.
Exactly. And the source wisely points out that a simpler, more natural way to say the same thing, something like, he studied hard for the test and felt confident in his preparation, is much more effective.
So the key insight here is less about just knowing fancy words and more about using maybe even slightly simpler advanced words smoothly, appropriately.
Spot on. It's about context and natural flow. And your sources give some great examples of advanced words used well. Adversely, foster, implement, ubiquitous, thrive.
Indispensable, affluent, alleviate.
Lucrative, resurgence. Seeing them in sentences really helps you get the hang of their nuances and how to actually use them correctly. It's that subtle shade of meaning.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's look at the different categories of essential TOEFL vocabulary that your sources highlighted. It seems like breaking things down might make the whole task feel a bit less overwhelming.
Absolutely. And the materials you share do a great job of this. First up, we have campus vocabulary.
Right, the university setting stuff.
Exactly. This is super relevant because so many of the listening and speaking scenarios are set right there. Think about talking with an academic advisor or discussing course prerequisites.
Or dorm life, roommates, getting transcripts, choosing electives.
All that everyday campus stuff. Being familiar with those terms can really boost your comprehension and help you respond more naturally.
Yeah, you need the vocabulary of the environment they put you in. Okay, then we have academic vocabulary. This seems pretty central.
Definitely. As you'd expect, it shows up a lot in academic texts, so crucial for reading and writing, but also really important for understanding lectures in the listening section and expressing academic ideas when you speak.
So words like
individual, research consistent, area, regulations, perceived, emphasis, undertake, the fundamental building blocks of academic talk. Understanding these is pretty essential.
Got it. The next category mentioned is idiomatic vocabulary. Now, one source offered a really helpful clarification here, which I appreciated. It's not about memorizing really obscure idioms.
That's such a key distinction. You don't need to master rare, complex idioms. It's more about using English that sounds natural and correct, especially when you're speaking.
So less like, it's raining cats and dogs, and more.
More like common, natural ways of expressing ideas. The examples given were things like pet peeves for something that annoys you, or soft-spoken for someone with a quiet voice. These make your English sound more fluent, less like a direct translation.
Okay, natural phrasing. And finally, the big one, advanced vocabulary. One source called this a game changer and the fastest way to improve your TOEFL score. That's quite a claim.
It is, but it makes sense, right? Having a strong command of more complex words lets you express yourself with more precision and understand more nuanced language when you hear or read it.
So examples here were things like occur, accumulate.
Yeah, collide, copious, divert, frivolous, hindrance. Expanding your vocabulary in this area can really elevate your performance across all the sections, gives you more tools.
Okay, so we've got a good handle on the different types of vocabulary to focus on. Now, let's talk about some effective learning strategies. One that really stood out was using prefixes, as a tool to unlock word meanings.
Yes. This is such an efficient way to grow your vocabulary. As one source explained, understanding common prefixes is like having a key to figure out unfamiliar words.
Right.
Take pre, meaning before. Once you know that, words like preview or pre-med just become much easier to grasp, even if you've never seen them before.
And the materials you shared go into a really detailed breakdown of loads of common prefixes with examples relevant to academic stuff and potential TOEFL words. It's almost like learning a code.
Exactly. A code to unlock groups of words. They cover a wide range. For instance, anti meaning against. Think antisocial, antifreeze, antibody.
And contra also means against, like contradict, contravene. Then extra meaning beyond, like extracurricular, extraterrestrial.
And the list keeps going. Bene, meaning well or good, right? Benefit. Benevolent, ante meaning before, as an antecedent, indicating wrongly or badly. Mistake, misunderstand, misinterpret.
That's a common one.
Very common. And a really helpful one is meaning, again, it's in so many words. Reabsorb, reappear, rebuild, reconsider. And nouns too, like resurgence, reconstruction, renewal. Understanding just instantly expands your recognition.
We also have ex, meaning out, like exclude, expel, and variations like co-com, con, meaning together, or with, compliant, combine, connect, convene.
Don't forget hyper, meaning excessively hypertension, hyperactive, inter meaning between, like intercultural, intervene, meaning from or down, like descend, deduct, dehydrate.
Then post for after, postgraduate, post-war. We already mentioned before precedents, prehistoric, trans, meaning across or beyond, like transport, transatlantic, transmit. And finally, pro, meaning forward, before, or supporter, propose, proponent, proliferate.
It's actually quite remarkable how many words start to make sense just by knowing these common beginnings.
It really shifts your learning, doesn't it? From just pure memorization to something more, I don't know, strategic.
Yeah.
Insightful.
Exactly that. You develop a deeper, more adaptable grasp of vocabulary. It's about understanding the building blocks.
Okay, now, one of the most fascinating and I think potentially very useful sections of the materials you shared focuses on subject-specific vocabulary. This seems incredibly valuable for tackling those reading passages and listening lectures that get into specific academic fields.
Absolutely. Being familiar with the common vocabulary in these fields can give you a real leg up. Let's start with astronomy. Your sources provided a list of, 22 terms?
Yes, something like
covering everything from the basics like celestial and orbital to more specific concepts like comets and black holes.
And they clarified things like the difference between a galaxy, that huge system of stars, and a star cluster, which is smaller, and supernova, the explosion, versus a nebula, which is more like a star nursery.
Right, and they explain the difference. Asteroids, too, those rocky bodies. And the sequence of meteorite, how it goes from space to atmosphere to ground.
Oh, okay. That's useful.
Yeah, and meteor showers, constellations, light years for distance. They also touched on star life cycles, red giants, white dwarfs, and the difference between a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse.
Right, moon blocking sun versus earth blocking sun for the moon.
Exactly. And terms like luminosity for brightness, stellar relating to stars, and interstellar for space between stars. It gives you a solid foundation for astro topics.
Okay, moving on, we have biology with a longer list, about 40 terms. This feels like a really common TOEFL topic area.
It definitely is. We start with fundamentals like enzymes, symbiosis, receptors on cells, and mitosis, cell division.
Genome, that's the complete genetic material, right?
That's it. And stimulus, or stimuli in plural, anything causing a response. Hormones like estrogen, the idea of mutation.
Key processes, too, like photosynthesis in plants and cellular respiration for energy.
Homeostasis, keeping things stable inside. Chloroplasts in plant cells.
Yeah.
Then genetics. The difference between genotype, the genes themselves, and phenotype, what you actually see.
Okay, genotype, phenotype. Got it. And eukaryotes versus prokaryotes? Cell types?
Fundamental cell types, yeah. Eukaryotes are more complex, like our cells. Prokaryotes are simpler, like bacteria. Then speciation, how new species evolve. And the basic building blocks. Amino acids for proteins, lipids for fats.
Neurons for nerves, cortisol for stress hormone.
Right. Anaerobic means without oxygen. Secrete means to release something. RNA and DNA, the vital genetic molecules. Environmental terms like moisture, foliage. Animal behaviors like hibernation and the verb hibernate.
Forage for finding food. And scavenger.
Exactly. Forager is the one doing it. Scavenger eats dead things. Internal versus external structures. Species, the basic classification unit.
Then the bigger picture. Food web, food chain, ecosystem.
And how organisms get food. Heterotrophs can't make their own. That includes herbivores, carnivores, omnivores. Autotrophs can make their own, like plants.
Crustacean, like crabs and shrimp.
Yep, those aquatic invertebrates. And finally, biodiversity, the variety of life. It's a pretty comprehensive list for biology.
It really is. Okay, next up, zoology. And wow, this one includes a massive list, 109 terms. Looks like the focus here is heavily on classifying animals.
Exactly. With that many terms, the source wisely organizes it into categories with examples. It starts with the big split. Invertebrates, no backbone like sea anemones, snails, insects. And vertebrates, with the backbone.
And within invertebrates, they highlighted arthropods, segmented bodies, hard covering.
Right. Insects, spiders, crustaceans fall into that. Then for vertebrates, mammals, warm-blooded, fur hair, live birth, milk examples like hamsters, whales, bats, us. Birds are another class, eagles, owls, ostrich.
Reptiles next, cold-blooded, scaly skin. snakes, lizards. And they made that distinction between turtles, mostly water, and tortoises, mostly land.
Yes, helpful distinction. Crocodiles, alligators too. Then amphibians living in water and on land. Cold-blooded frogs and toads were the example.
And fish aquatic, gills, fins, clownfish, trout, etc.
Beyond classes, there are general terms like specimen, warm-blooded versus cold-blooded. The technical terms are endotherms and ectotherms. Diurnal for day-active animals, nocturnal for night-active ones.
Dietary habits again. Herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, plus the adjectives carnivorous, herbivorous.
Wild versus domesticated animals, pretty straightforward. Rodents, mammals with those sharp front teeth like mice, rats, squirrels, and the predator-prey relationship.
Habitats too. Aquatic, freshwater like lakes, saltwater like oceans versus terrestrial meaning land, with specific examples like deserts, rainforests, and marines specifically for ocean sea animals.
Right, differentiating marine from just general aquatic. And a few extras like humpback whales, vultures were thrown in. It's a lot, but categorized it makes sense.
Yeah, it gives a solid framework for zoology passages or lectures. Okay, last subject area, history. About 50 terms here, also nicely categorized.
Yes, organized by theme. First, people in an ancient city. Roles like ruler, courtiers, priests, artisan, merchant, peasant. Even terms like count, colonel, delegates, and invader.
Then a category on exploration, terms like inhabitants, colonists, native tribes, hunters and farmers, hunter-gatherers, nomadic life, bison herds.
And settlements, coastal, inland, sedentary, nomadic, distinguishing those. The idea of territory comes through as well.
And the final theme, maybe inevitably, conflict.
Sadly common in history, yes. Terms like oppression, seize power, exploit often leading to revolt or uprising, the role of an ally, the act to resist.
Bigger events like upheaval, invasion, outcomes like defeat, conquer, surrender, and then the aftermath, restore, abolish, and reign for the period of rule.
Using them in a story-like context, as the source did, really helps cement their meaning.
This subject-specific vocabulary is such a goldmine. It really shows how knowing key terms for these common academic areas can give you a real edge.
Definitely. It's about anticipating the language you'll likely encounter.
Now, shifting gears slightly, but still crucial, the power of linking words. Your sources really stress how important these are for fluency and clarity.
Oh, absolutely. They're the bridges, right? Connecting sentences, connecting paragraphs. They make everything flow better, make it more logical, less robotic.
And the sources specifically talked about speaking, pointing out 3 common mistakes. First, just not using enough linking words. Makes you sound choppy, hard to elaborate.
Exactly. Mistake number 2, using really formal ones, like moreover, nevertheless. They sound stiff in conversation, much better suited for writing.
Okay. And the third mistake.
Using them incorrectly or just too much, trying to stuff them in where they don't fit. It sounds forced, unnatural.
Yeah.
The advice is basically aim for maybe 2-3 informal linking words used naturally in your response.
And they gave examples of good, basic ones for speaking.
Yeah, simple but effective ones like first, second, also, but so showed how to use them. Also, words for giving examples, like for example, like such as. And words for complex sentences and integrated speaking, unless, even if, while.
Useful for those tasks, and words for explaining reasons.
That's why, as a result. And for adding another point, also, on top of that, all with example sentences, which is helpful.
Okay, so that's speaking. What about writing? Similar advice.
Pretty similar. Don't force them in, use them confidently. Too many or overly formal ones can actually hurt your score, not help it.
And they provided a list of essentials for writing, like 18 of them.
Yeah, a focused list categorized by function. For contrast or complication, the big one is, however, very versatile, shown in general, and integrated essay examples.
For giving examples, the same familiar ones. For example, for instance, like such as.
For adding information, moreover, and in addition, showing how to build on points. For showing result consequence as a result, therefore.
And for introducing contrasting ideas in complex sentences.
Although while, they noted while is super useful, and even though. Examples provided, including for the integrated essay context.
What about starting sentences with contrasting ideas?
In contrast, on the other hand, again, with an eye towards the integrated essay. And finally, they reminded us not to forget the basics. But, so also, even though, showing how you might combine a couple naturally.
Wow, this detailed look at linking words for both speaking and writing feels incredibly practical. Mastering these seems like it could really boost your scores.
It really can. It's about making your communication smooth, coherent, logical Erewhon, which is a huge part of demonstrating English proficiency.
Well, for you, our listener, this deep dive into TOEFL vocabulary acquisition has been quite the journey through a lot of info. Let's try to bring it all together with some key takeaways.
Yeah, I think this exploration really hammered home that building TOEFL vocab isn't just about, memorizing endless lists. It's much more about understanding the types of words that matter most.
Right, like campus, academic, advanced.
Exactly. And using smart strategies like prefix analysis to unlock meanings, plus recognizing how vocabulary works in those different academic subjects you might see.
Astronomy, biology, history. And crucially, mastering those linking words to express your ideas clearly and, importantly, naturally in both speaking and writing.
So thinking about actionable steps for you listening,
Yeah.
maybe start by reflecting on how familiar you feel with those different vocabulary categories we talked about.
Good idea. And seriously, consider adding prefix analysis to your study routine. It can unlock so many words.
And maybe make a point to explore those subject-specific lists when you do practice materials. See them in context.
And finally, really pay attention to how you use linking words. When you practice speaking, when you practice writing, aim for that natural integration, not forcing them in.
Definitely. And as you continue your TOEFL prep, here's maybe a final thought to mull over.
Okay.
How might really understanding the relationships between words through things like prefixes, roots, how they're used in context, how might that not only boost your score, but also just genuinely enrich your overall understanding of English and all the diverse subjects it covers? That's a great point. It really goes beyond just test taking, doesn't it?
Right.
It moves into the realm of true language mastery.
Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're looking at something really interesting. It's a YouTube transcript from IELTS Advantage. And the title is 69 Advanced Words, C1 plus C2, to get a band 9.
Right. Quite a list.
It is. But look, this isn't just about, test prep. Our real aim here is to dig into these sophisticated words.
Understand what makes them tick.
Exactly. Understand their power in communication, really move beyond just memorizing definitions.
Yeah, knowing how they work, how they elevate things.
Right, especially in writing. But really, anytime you want to express yourself with more precision, more impact. So if that sounds like you, you're in the right place.
Absolutely. And what's really useful, I think, is that these advanced words, they aren't just for exams. Understanding the subtleties, the nuances, it really unlocks a better way to talk about complex ideas, with more finesse.
Layers of meaning.
Exactly. Layers that maybe simpler words just miss.
Okay, let's dive in. First word, viable. The transcript says able to work or succeed. So feasible, workable, possible. And you see it in phrases like viable option, viable alternative. The student example was, a viable solution is to heavily punish lawbreakers.
Okay.
When you hear viable, what's the sort of subtle aspect that stands out?
Well, what's interesting about viable is its connection to practicality, real-world practicality.
Right.
It's not just like, could this happen in theory? It's more, does it actually have the capacity to work, to function well?
To get the job done.
Yes. Notice it often goes with nouns like solution or option. It suggests someone's actually assessed it.
Ah, okay. So it's not just possible. It's likely to succeed in practice.
Precisely. That distinction is really key, especially in persuasive writing and speaking.
Makes sense. Okay, next up, schooling.
Schooling.
Defined as education at school. Synonyms: education, learning, training. And you get pairings like primary schooling, secondary schooling. The student example mentioned the difficulty for teachers providing proper schooling in Vietnam because of large class sizes. Seems pretty straightforward.
It does, but there's a slight shade of meaning. While it overlaps with education, schooling points specifically to the formal education you get in schools.
The system, the institution.
Exactly. It's more precise when you're talking about those structured environments.
So the class size example fits perfectly because it's a challenge within that formal system.
Right, making schooling a better fit there than just the broader word education.
Got it. Okay, word 3 is renowned.
Renowned. Famous or respected?
Synonyms: well-known, famous, celebrated. And you often see it with expert or renowned for, something like a renowned athlete. The example sentence was, accepted to work under this renowned company. It feels like it has more weight than just famous.
Oh, definitely. Renowned elevates the idea. It implies widespread recognition, yes, but recognition for excellence.
Earned respect.
Exactly. A history of achievements that people admire, built up over time. Someone famous might be known for anything, really.
But renowned suggests high standing based on merit.
Yes. Think of it as a deeper, more established kind of fame.
Okay. Moving on to prime, meaning best or most important.
Like top or main?
Yeah. Collocations include prime example, prime advantage, prime reason. A student wrote, "The prime disadvantage is that these companies use the natural resources." It really focuses your attention, doesn't it?
It does. Prime signals to your listener or reader, pay attention, this is the most significant bit I'm about to mention.
And it works for good things and bad things.
Right. Advantages, disadvantages, reasons, examples. It's versatile. That makes it a really powerful tool for structuring an argument.
Highlighting your key points.
Exactly. It's not just an example. It's the prime example, the best one.
Okay. The next word is prone, meaning likely to do or experience something.
Inclined, susceptible.
Right. You see, prone to errors. But the example is interesting. People that have a diet based on plants and seeds are more prone to have a healthier life. So it's about a predisposition.
Yes. Prone points to a higher chance of something happening. Could be good, could be bad.
Like in the examples.
Exactly. It suggests an inherent tendency or susceptibility. So it's useful when you're discussing things that increase the likelihood of certain outcomes or conditions.
Got it. Word number 6. Officials.
Officials. People in authority or government.
Like authorities, leaders, administrators. You often hear government officials, public officials. The student example mentioned newspapers publishing information about them. It's a pretty specific group.
It is, and it's a really crucial term when you're discussing governance, policy, the actions of public bodies.
Right.
Officials is the precise way to refer to people holding those positions of authority. If you're analyzing decisions or policies, it's the right word for formal language.
Okay. Next, we have output.
Output, the amount produced.
Synonyms like production, yield, collocations, industrial output, total output. The example mentioned uniforms helping increase company output. Ties into results, productivity.
Precisely. Output is fundamental when you're talking economics, manufacturing, efficiency. It quantifies the result.
What you get out.
Exactly. Whether it's a factory's production, a farm's yield, or a company's overall performance, output gives you a clear metric.
Good for discussing economic factors.
Okay.
Word 8 is intellect.
Intellect, ability to think and understand.
Intelligence is the synonym given. You see, share a child's intellect.
Right.
The example talks about educational TV helping a child's intellect. It feels like more than just knowing facts, though.
Oh, absolutely. Intellect refers to those higher cognitive abilities, reasoning, learning, understanding abstract ideas, making judgments.
The machinery of the mind.
Sort of, yes. It's about actively processing information, developing cognitive power. It goes beyond just retaining knowledge. Using intellect adds that depth when you're discussing mental capabilities.
Right. Okay, incentives is next, meaning things that encourage action.
Motivation, reward, encouragement.
Yeah. We often see provide incentives or offer incentives. The example was about giving incentives to encourage voting. Gets to the heart of what makes people act.
It really does. Incentives are the drivers behind so many actions and decisions. They highlight those external factors that influence our choices. Understanding how they work is critical in economics, psychology, policymaking, you name it.
Like the voting example shows, how to encourage certain behaviors.
Exactly.
Okay, number 10 is irrespective, meaning without considering.
Regardless, despite.
And the main collocation is irrespective of. A student wrote about life fulfillment irrespective of more responsibilities. It lets you make a point that holds true regardless of other factors.
Precisely. Irrespective is a powerful way to show a kind, comprehensive, unbiased view.
How so?
Well, it signals that a specific factor doesn't actually change the outcome or the truth of your statement. By using irrespective of, you show you're aware of different circumstances.
But your main point still stands.
Right. It adds a sense of objectivity, of thoroughness to your argument.
Okay, number 11 is fundamental, meaning important.
Essential.
Primary. Lots of collocations. Fundamental principle, fundamental change, fundamental right, fundamental reason. The example is about the fundamental right to privacy. It really underlines the core importance.
Absolutely. Fundamental means something forms the very basis or foundation of something else.
The bedrock.
Yes.
Yeah.
A principle or right that's so central, other things depend on it. When you use fundamental, you're really highlighting that indispensable foundational nature of your point.
Got it. Next up, Disclose, meaning to make something known.
Reveal, show, tell.
Main collocation, to disclose information. The example linked publishing private details to disclosing political corruption. It feels like uncovering something hidden.
It does. Disclose implies bringing something private or unknown into the open. It often carries a sense of revealing information that might be sensitive or significant or maybe even deliberately hidden.
Like the corruption example.
Exactly. Disclose highlights making that wrongdoing public, which is vital for accountability.
Right. Word 13, detrimental.
Detrimental, causing harm or damage.
Synonyms, harmful, damaging, bad. The main collocation is detrimental effect, often on health or the environment. The example, smoking has a detrimental effect on health. It's a strong word for negative outcomes.
It is. Detrimental is a potent adjective. It clearly signals a significant negative impact or harmful result.
More than just bad.
Yes, it emphasizes the damaging nature, the adverse consequences, whether it's health, the environment, or whatever you're discussing.
Okay. Moving on, we have adolescence.
Adolescents, young people, teenagers, usually 13, 19.
The example mentions adolescence being free of responsibilities. The transcript rightly warns against using it just to mean children. Why is that distinction important?
Ah, that's crucial. Adolescence isn't just any young person. It's that specific developmental stage.
Between childhood and adulthood.
Right. Marked by unique physical, emotional, social changes. Using it just for children is inaccurate. It misses the specific nuance you need when talking about issues relevant to teenagers.
Makes sense. 15th word. Accountable.
Accountable. Responsible for actions.
Synonyms. Responsible, answerable, liable. Collocations. Accountable to, accountable for. The example was about politicians being held accountable for wrongdoings. It's about having to justify your actions.
Exactly. Accountable really stresses that obligation to answer for what you've done and to face the consequences if it's judged wrong.
A core principle.
Yes, fundamental in ethics, in governance. It highlights the responsibility that comes with authority or specific roles. The politician example really nails why it's crucial for public trust.
Okay. Next, addressed, meaning to fix an issue or problem.
Tackled, deal with, handled, fixed.
Common pairings. Address a problem, address the issue. The example mentioned bullying being addressed through awareness and new laws. Suggests a proactive approach.
It does. Addressed signifies taking deliberate steps to deal with or resolve something. An active engagement with the challenge.
Does it always mean fully fixed?
Not necessarily. It can suggest a full resolution, like new laws might aim for, but it can also just mean the initial steps taken to manage or mitigate it, like raising awareness.
So it's quite versatile for talking about problem solving.
Yes, exactly.
Word 17, affluence.
Affluence, having a lot of money.
Wealthy, rich, prosperous, collocations. An affluent society, an affluent country. A student wrote about residents having an opportunity to become affluent, speaks to a high level of financial well-being.
Yes. Affluence denotes significant wealth, material comfort, often used in economic discussions about prosperity, resource availability.
And the example highlights upward mobility.
Right. The potential to achieve that financial success.
Okay, allocate is next, meaning to distribute resources or duties.
Assign, distribute, allot.
Main collocation. To allocate resources. The example was about investment banks deciding to allocate a percentage of top jobs to women. Implies a deliberate distribution.
Precisely. Allocate is about intentionally assigning and distributing resources, money, people, materials for a specific purpose.
There's a decision behind it.
Yes, a decision process about how best to divide things up to get the results you want, like the diversity example shows.
Got it. Number 19, awareness.
Awareness. Knowledge about something.
Knowledge, understanding, common pairings. To raise awareness, awareness campaigns. The example suggested awareness campaigns as a solution, emphasizes being informed.
Awareness is often the absolute first step in tackling social issues.
You can't fix what you don't know about.
Exactly. It underlines how critical public knowledge and understanding are for recognizing problems and motivating change. Awareness campaigns are a common, often necessary strategy.
Okay. Bullying is next.
Bullying. Repeated aggressive behavior intended to hurt.
Synonyms. Harassment, intimidation, abuse, collocations, school bullying, cyberbullying.
Yeah.
The example linked increased cyberbullying to hate crimes. It's a really prominent issue, unfortunately.
It is. Bullying describes that specific pattern, harmful, aggressive, repeated, intended to cause distress.
And now online, too.
Right. Cyberbullying shows how it's adapted. And linking it to serious things like hate crimes really underscores how severe it is.
Definitely. Okay, word 21. Burden.
Burden, a heavy load or responsibility.
Load, responsibility, common pairings, heavy burden, financial burden. The example was about not coping with the financial burden of buying clothes, conveys being weighed down.
Yes, burden really effectively communicates that sense of weight, difficulty. Could be literal, could be figurative, like a responsibility or a financial obligation.
Financial burden seems very common.
It is, especially when discussing economic challenges for individuals or communities.
Capabilities is next, meaning ability to do something.
Abilities, skills, talents.
Collocations, their capabilities, its capabilities. The example talked about athletes using drugs to exceed their physical capabilities, touches on human limits.
Right. Capabilities refers to that inherent potential or capacity to do things. The range of skills, talents, abilities someone or something has.
And the example raises questions about those natural limits.
And the ethics of trying to push past them artificially.
Okay. Word 23. Commonly.
Commonly. Frequently or usually?
Often, usually, regularly. Collocation. Commonly used. The example says something can be commonly seen in schools. Straightforward indicator of how often.
Yes, commonly is just a direct, effective way to signal frequency or typicality. Using adverbs like this adds precision, tells you how often something happens.
Simple but useful. Okay, consumption.
Consumption, the act of using something.
Use, usage, collocations, energy consumption, human consumption. The example mentioned animals sold for human consumption. Central term for resources and needs.
Absolutely. Consumption is key when discussing how resources are used: energy, food, goods. Very relevant for sustainability, human impact on the environment.
The food example is clear. Okay, word 25 is competence.
Competence, ability to do something well.
Ability, skill, proficiency, collocations, professional competence, competence in something.
Right.
The example suggested companies would reach a higher competence level by allocating jobs to women. It's more than just being able to do it.
Exactly. Competence implies a level of skill, proficiency that lets someone perform effectively to a good standard, having the necessary abilities to get the desired result.
And the example links diversity to organizational competence. Interesting.
Yes, it does.
Corruption is next. Dishonest or illegal behavior by those in power.
Dishonesty, fraud, bribery.
Main collocation, political corruption. The example was about revealing politicians' corruption. Serious issue, erodes trust.
Hugely serious. Corruption undermines institutions, has widespread negative effects. It's specifically about abusing entrusted power for private gain.
And the example highlights transparency.
Yes, and accountability. Exposing and fighting corruption, especially in politics.
Okay, we have a pair next. Downsides and drawbacks.
Right. Both meaning negative aspects.
Disadvantages, negatives, collocations, potential downsides, major drawbacks. A student mentioned the major drawback of a method being its high cost, essential for balance.
Yes, having both words gives you a bit of nuance, maybe avoids repetition. They are very similar, though.
The collocations help emphasize the degree of negativity.
Potential, major, etc.
Okay. Deficiency is next. A lack of something.
A lack, a shortage, an insufficiency.
Collocations. A vitamin deficiency. Deficiency in. The example. People on vegetarian diets might have a protein deficiency. Often relates to health.
Yes, deficiency points specifically to an inadequate amount of something needed, commonly used for health and nutrition, as you said.
But could apply elsewhere, too.
Sure. Deficiency in resources, a deficiency in skills. Anywhere a necessary element is lacking.
Got it. Embrace is next. To accept with enthusiasm.
Accept, welcome, adopt.
Main collocation. To embrace change. The example. Gaining knowledge and embracing other cultures suggests a positive, open attitude.
It does. Embrace conveys this wholehearted acceptance, positive engagement, often with something new or different.
More than just tolerating it.
Oh, yes. It implies a willingness to adopt it, integrate it. Like the example of embracing cultures, it's beautiful.
It is. Okay. Enhance, meaning to improve something.
Improve, boost, increase.
Common pairing, to enhance performance. The example. Drama lessons helping to enhance confidence, making something better or stronger.
Exactly. Enhance is a great verb for describing improving quality, value, effectiveness. Suggests an addition or change leads to a positive outcome.
Like confidence in the example. Emissions is next. Gases or substances sent into the air.
Output, essentially.
Key phrases. Carbon emissions, reduce emissions, the example. Vegetarian diets helping reduce carbon emissions. Critical environmental term.
Absolutely critical. Emissions is central for environment, policy, pollution, climate change.
Especially carbon emissions.
Right, because of their impact. And reduce emissions is the goal. The diet example shows how broadly relevant the term is.
It does. Okay, establishments.
Establishments, a business or organization.
Institutions, organizations, firms. Educational establishments was highlighted, like universities, a more formal term.
Yes, establishments is more formal, more encompassing for various organizations. Educational establishments is a sophisticated alternative to just schools or universities. Adds formality.
Right. Expenditure is next. Money spent on something.
Spending, costs, outlay.
Often linked with government or public expenditure. The student example mentioned increased expenditure on uniforms, the formal word for spending.
It is. Expenditure refers to spending money, often in a more formal or official context. Governments, organizations, businesses.
Tracking costs.
Exactly. Analyzing the costs they incur.
Okay. Exceed, meaning to go beyond a limit or standard.
Surpass, go beyond, outdo.
Common pairing. Exceed expectations. The example again was athletes using substances to exceed physical capabilities, pushing past boundaries.
Yes, exceed clearly communicates going beyond a set limit, standard, or expectation, surpassing a threshold.
And the athlete example highlights wanting to push limits.
Sometimes controversially.
Harassment is next. Aggressive pressure or intimidation.
Bullying, intimidation, abuse.
Collocations, workplace harassment. Sexual harassment. The example was about sexual harassment allegations. Serious social and professional issue.
Very serious. Harassment describes that pattern of unwelcome, offensive behavior, creates a hostile, intimidating environment.
And the examples show specific, sadly common forms.
Yes, with significant negative impact.
Okay. Hence, meaning for this reason.
Therefore, thus, so.
Collocation. Hence the need for, the example connected more sports facilities to more people doing sports. Hence staying healthy. Formal way to show consequence.
It is. Hence is formal, concise, clearly shows cause and effect. This happened. Hence that follows.
Signals a logical conclusion.
Right. Contributes to coherence, but you need to use it appropriately so it doesn't sound, too stuffy. Natural flow is key.
Good point. Informative is next, providing useful information.
Educational, enlightening, instructive.
Often describes content, resources. The example, kids watching informative and educational shows. Clearly about conveying knowledge.
Yes, informative highlights that. Purpose, educating, enlightening, providing valuable knowledge, enhancing understanding.
Positive role of media in the example. Infrastructure is next. Basic systems and structures.
System is a synonym given.
Collocations, transport infrastructure, infrastructure projects. Example links good infrastructure to better quality of life. Foundational stuff.
Absolutely foundational. Infrastructure covers those essential systems and facilities a society needs to function. Transport, communication, utilities.
The basics.
Right. Investing in it is vital for economic development, community well-being, as the example shows.
Okay. Insights, meaning understanding or knowledge about something.
Understandings, perceptions, intuition.
Common pairing. Valuable insights. The example.
Yeah.
School lessons providing valuable insights into being good members of society. Deeper understanding.
Yes. Insights implies that deeper level. A sudden realization, a new perspective.
More than just facts.
Right. Profound comprehension. Gaining valuable insights is often the goal of learning, research, analysis.
Insufficient is next. Not enough.
Inadequate, lacking, deficient.
Often about resources, pairing, insufficient funds. The example discussed insufficient support for the poorest highlights a lack with bad consequences.
Exactly. Insufficient clearly indicates a shortage, not adequate to meet a need. Often points to situations where available resources or support aren't enough, leading to negative outcomes.
Like the poverty example. Innate is next. Existing from birth or natural.
Inborn, inherent, natural.
Collocation. Innate ability, the example, combining innate ability with hard work. Talents you're born with.
Yes. Innate refers to qualities or abilities present from birth, not learned. Natural talents, inherent predispositions.
But the example says you still need hard work.
Often, yes. Innate ability is important, but usually needs effort to achieve real success. Nature and nurture.
Right. Inappropriate is next. Not suitable or proper.
Unsuitable, improper, unfit.
Main collocation. Inappropriate behavior. The example. Employees wearing inappropriate clothes for work. About what's acceptable in context.
Exactly. Inappropriate describes something not suitable or fitting for the situation. Context, expectations. Often relates to behavior, dress, language that breaks social or professional norms.
Like the work clothes example. Merit is next. Quality of being good or worthy.
Worth, value, excellence.
Common pairing. Academic merit. The example argued employee selection should be based on merit, deservingness based on qualifications.
Yes, merit emphasizes worthiness based on abilities, achievements, qualifications. The principle of deciding based on merit
Is seen as fair and efficient.
right, often considered a cornerstone of fairness.
Okay, mediocre.
Mediocre, not very good, average.
Average, ordinary, so-so. The example was star athletes who started off mediocre. Just okay, not amazing.
Right, neither particularly good nor bad, average range. But the example is hopeful.
How so?
Suggests initial mediocrity, doesn't rule out future excellence. You can improve.
Good point. Notable is next. Worthy of attention or important.
Remarkable, significant, noteworthy.
Collocations. A notable achievement. The example. Notable people's lives being in danger. Highlights something significant.
Yes, notable draws attention to something significant, remarkable, worth noticing.
Yeah.
Helps highlight key points or illustrative examples.
And the example points to risks of being prominent. Numerous is next. Many in number.
Many, several, various.
Collocation, numerous times. The example discussed the workforce in numerous developed nations. Straightforward way to say a lot.
It is. Numerous clearly indicates a large quantity without needing an exact number. Useful for conveying prevalence or widespread occurrence.
Like the workforce example. Okay, peers.
Peers, people of the same age or status.
Equals, colleagues, contemporaries. Common pairing. Peer pressure.
Right.
The example. Kids outperforming their peers on tests. Comparison within a similar group.
Exactly. Peers are people in the same social group. Age, status, job. Comparing yourself to peers is common for gauging performance or development.
And peer pressure shows their influence.
Yes, a significant social dynamic.
Phenomenon is next. Something that happens or exists especially unusual.
Event, occurrence, happening.
Collocations, natural phenomenon, social phenomenon. The example suggested this phenomenon might lead to youth apathy in politics. Useful for describing interesting occurrences.
It is versatile.
Yeah.
Phenomenon describes any observable event, occurrence, fact, especially one that's interesting, unusual, maybe not fully understood.
Natural events, social trends.
Exactly. Like the political apathy example.
Proportion is next. A part of a whole or a percentage.
Part, portion, fraction.
Common pairing. Large proportion. The example. Allocating a certain proportion of vacancies to females, discussing parts of a whole.
Yes, proportion is key for talking about the relative size of a part compared to the whole. Allows precise communication about quantities, distributions. Often uses percentages or fractions.
Like the representation example.
Fair allocation.
Revenue is next. Income from business or government.
Income, earnings, profits, tax revenue.
Common pairing. Annual revenue. The example linked state revenue to providing high-quality services, fundamental to finance.
Absolute core concept. Revenue is the income generated by businesses or governments. Understanding revenue streams is essential for financial health, funding public services.
Like the example showed. Okay, resent.
Resent, to feel angry or bitter about.
Begrudge, dislike, be annoyed by, pairing.
Yeah.
Resent the fact. The example, children not resenting their parents, a strong negative emotion.
It is. Resent describes strong anger, bitterness, ill will, often from a perceived injustice or offense. Powerful word for negative feelings, relationship strain.
Like the parent-child example hints at. Sector is next. Parts or divisions of a larger group.
Divisions, segments, areas.
Examples. The public sector. The science and technology sectors. The example mentions science and tech sectors. Useful for categorizing areas.
Very valuable for dividing a larger entity, economy, society into distinct parts.
Yeah.
Allows focused analysis of specific areas, like different industries.
Okay. Workforce.
Workforce, all the people who work in a company or country.
Staff, employees. Labor force.
Yeah.
Collocation. a skilled workforce. Example, multinational companies employing a large workforce. Central to employment economy talk.
Absolutely key term. Workforce is the total number of people employed or available for work. Its skills, its size are critical factors for success.
For nations and companies, okay? Gifted.
Gifted, having a special talent or ability.
Talented, skilled, exceptional. Collocation, a gifted children. Example, gifted children achieving goals early, exceptional natural abilities.
Yes, gifted describes individuals with extraordinary natural talent or aptitude. Recognizing and supporting them is often a focus in education, talent development.
Potential for exceptional achievement.
Exactly, as the example illustrates.
Nutritional is next, relating to nutrients in food.
Dietary, nutritious, nourishing.
Pairings, nutritional value. Nutritional deficiencies. Example, vegetarian diets potentially causing nutritional deficiencies, essential for health diet discussions.
Crucial adjective. Discussing food and health, focusing on the nutrients that sustain us. Understanding nutritional content, potential deficiencies is vital for well-being.
As the example points out, okay, thrive.
Thrive, to grow or develop well.
Flourish, prosper, succeed. Collocation, to thrive in. Example, some inborn qualities help people thrive in music or sports. Positive growth and success.
Yes, thrive conveys that strong sense of flourishing, positive development, success. Not just surviving, but actively growing, reaching full potential.
Often due to good conditions or innate qualities.
As the example suggests.
Unsafe is next. Not safe or dangerous.
Dangerous, risky, hazardous.
Collocation, unsafe conditions, unsafe environment. Example, being a star can create an unsafe environment. Highlights lack of security.
Yes, unsafe clearly indicates danger, risk, lack of security. Identifying and mitigating unsafe conditions is crucial everywhere.
And the example makes an interesting point about fame's downsides.
It does.
And finally, unwind, meaning to relax after work or tension.
Relax, rest, de-stress.
Collocation, unwind after. Example, television can help people unwind about reducing stress.
Exactly. Unwind describes that process of relaxing, releasing tension, often after work or stress. Important part of self-care, well-being.
And the example shows a common way people do it. Wow, that was quite a linguistic workout.
Of a lot of words.
A really rich collection of vocabulary we just went through. Now, it's tempting, isn't it, to think, okay, use all these fancy words. That's the key to sounding advanced.
Right, just sprinkle them in.
But the YouTube video we got this from, it actually shared a fascinating statistic.
Oh, what was that?
In high-scoring student essays for IELTS, only a really small percentage of words were actually C1 or C2 level. Like around 3 per C2 and maybe 6 per C1.
That is low.
Yeah. And even expert writers, apparently, use these advanced words pretty sparingly. What does that tell us, really, about good communication?
It's a powerful illustration, isn't it? It shows that clarity, precision, and accurately using a strong core vocabulary, that's far more critical.
More important than just dropping in complex words.
Much more. Effective communication is about being understood, making your point clearly. A well-chosen advanced word can definitely add nuance, add impact.
But too many, or using them wrongly,
can actually get in the way of clarity, make things confusing.
Right. So here's a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. How might focusing on truly understanding and correctly integrating, maybe even just a select few of these more nuanced words, how could that enhance the clarity and impact of your communication?
Yeah, think about specific areas where you want to be more precise.
Exactly. And maybe think about which of these words we discussed really sparked your curiosity or seemed particularly relevant to what you're interested in right now.
It's not about memorizing a list.
No, it's about deepening your understanding of the tools you have to express yourself effectively.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take your sources, dig in, and pull out the insights you need.
That's right.
Today, our focus is on the learner who wants to level up their spoken English, but, without getting totally swamped.
Exactly. And the learner gave us a great source, the J. Forrest English YouTube video, 1-hour lesson, IELTS full vocabulary course.
Okay.
So our mission really is to extract those practical, actionable bits for improving vocabulary and fluency day to day, not just prepping for a test.
Love it. Okay, practical strategies. So the video starts with the classic question. Where do you live?
The basics.
And the basic answer, I was born and raised in city. Grammatically, that's super simple, right? Past tense of solid start.
Absolutely solid. It's clear, it's simple, but What's great is how the video immediately shows you how to build on that.
Right.
Adding just a little bit more. I was born and raised in city, but now I live in city region. It's a small step, but it adds a layer.
It does, gives it a bit more story. And then it gets into talking about how long you've lived somewhere, using the present perfect.
Yes. I've lived here for over 10 years. That present perfect tells you it started in the past, but it's still true now. That connection to the present is key.
Yeah, still active. And there's that related tense too, the present perfect continuous.
Right. I've been living here for over 10 years. The video points out, and this is interesting, it's typically used with just live, work, and study.
Oh, okay.
It sort of emphasizes the ongoing, continuous nature of the action.
Gotcha. And it also clarified using for 10 years, specific time, versus for several years, more general.
Exactly. Painting that clearer picture of the time involved.
So for you, the learner, this first bit shows how you can take a simple answer and just layer in more sophisticated grammar to say more, basically.
Precisely. Start comfortable, then add those elements strategically. It sounds much more natural.
Okay, let's shift gears to talking about work. One of the first things, and it seems small, but it's huge, is articles, job titles.
Oh, yeah. So common.
It flags the correct "I'm an engineer" versus the incorrect "I'm engineer."
It's one of those details that really polydems your English, and it covers using the, too, for those unique roles, like I'm the executive director.
Right, or when the context makes the organization clear.
Although you don't always need to name the company when you use a or an.
Okay, now here's something I found really useful. Using gerund statements. That sounds fancy, but the example makes it clear. Instead of "I am an engineer and it's rewarding," you say, "Being an engineer is rewarding," starting with being. That feels more advanced somehow.
It does. And being there is acting like a noun, a gerund. It lets you talk about the idea or the experience of being an engineer.
Right.
The structure's pretty simple. Gerund, then the verb, then the rest. And the video gives great examples with verbs about what you enjoy.
Like, I love using my analytical skills.
Exactly. Or, I enjoy collaborating with my team. It sounds much more engaged.
And then it encourages adding adjectives, making the descriptions richer. Like, not just brainstorming solutions, but brainstorming unique solutions to complex problems.
It adds that texture, that detail, makes it more vivid.
Yeah. And it also mentions using transition words, little connectors like however for contrast or specifically to give details.
Those are like little signposts for your listener, helping them follow along. Super important for clarity.
And I like the idiom they included. Work around the clock.
Ah, yes, working nonstop.
Using idioms like that, it shows a deeper feel for the language, doesn't it? More natural.
Definitely. And these work strategies, they're not just for an exam context. They're useful everywhere. Networking, interviews, just office chat, presenting yourself clearly.
Totally. Okay, let's move to hobbies. The video suggests starting with a gerund statement, like sharing your general opinion first.
Yeah, like in my opinion, having hobbies is integral to living a fulfilling life.
Why do you think that's a good way to start? Seems a bit formal, maybe.
Well, it shows you've thought about it more broadly. It adds a bit of perspective before you just list things. And it reminds us of other ways to give opinions, too.
Right. In my view, from my perspective, personally, I think, variety is good.
Definitely. And then, to show you're really keen on a hobby, it introduces to be an avid plus noun.
I'm an avid reader or traveler. Avid really punches it up, shows passion.
Exactly. It adds that intensity. Then it shows using those gerunds again to explain why you enjoy it. Starting with the activity.
Hiking gives me the opportunity to.
Or starting with the noun form, guitar gives me the opportunity to. Same idea, different structure.
Okay, but what if you don't really have hobbies right now? Maybe you're too busy.
The video has a really smart approach for that. You can use the present perfect to explain. Until now, my focus has been on my career.
That makes sense. It's honest.
Yeah, gives a reason. Then you pivot to the future. However, I'm considering taking up hobby. And it flags the grammar, consider, plus the doing form.
And take up that phrasal verb for starting something new.
Right. Or the alternative.
However, I'd love to take up hobby. Using would love plus the base verb, that feels maybe a bit more aspirational.
It does. And even if you're not doing it yet, you can talk about the future benefit using the future simple with a gerund statement.
Like, drawing will give me the opportunity to relax.
Exactly. So even without a current hobby, you can still talk about it articulately, focusing on priorities and future plans.
Okay, family next. The video introduces a great adjective, close-knit.
Oh, that's a lovely one. Describes families with really strong bonds.
Yeah, or the simpler phrase, my family and I are very close. Same meaning, really conveys warmth.
It does. Close-knit is very efficient, packs a lot of meaning in, and a quick grammar reminder.
Ah, yes, everyone. Looks plural, but it's singular.
Right. Everyone gets along, not everyone get along.
And then there's that brilliant expression for resemblance, take after.
Yes. Meaning you look or act like someone usually older.
I take after my dad with his terrible jokes. Something like that.
Exactly. Or she takes after her mother in terms of her artistic talent. It covers looks and personality. It's just very natural, very common.
Why do you think it's so common?
That's a good question. I think because it's idiomatic, it sounds less like a textbook definition and more like, well, how people actually talk about family connections. It suggests that deeper link.
Makes sense. Okay, shifting to travel. Expressing the desire to go somewhere.
Right. I'd love the opportunity to see a landmark, or I'd love the opportunity to travel to or visit a place.
The prepositions. See a thing, travel to a place. Gotta watch those.
They can be tricky. Precision matters. And for hypothetical travel.
The second conditional. If I could travel anywhere, I would choose. Shows you can handle those what-if scenarios.
Yep, more complex grammar. And for talking about travel dreams, those gerund statements again.
Visiting Japan is at the top of my list. Simple enough.
But then you can elevate it using the present perfect for a long-held dream.
Right. Traveling to Japan has been at the top of my list for as long as I can remember. That adds that feeling of time, of longing.
Exactly. Adds that dimension. And to explain why, use opinion words.
From my perspective, Mount Fuji is just breathtaking. Something like that.
Perfect. Reinforces your reason. And finally, for travel, that really advanced expression.
Revel in the opportunity to, like really soak it up and enjoy it.
Yeah, I'd revel in the opportunity to explore ancient Mayan ruins. It's much stronger than just enjoy. Shows real vocabulary depth.
Okay, and then there was that bonus section. Clarification phrases. These are gold.
Absolutely lifesavers. When you stumble or think maybe you weren't clear.
Phrases like, what I'm trying to say is, or what I mean is.
To put it another way, in other words,
Yeah.
The advice is spot on. Pick a couple you like and practice them.
Makes sense. Get comfortable with them.
It just smooths out the conversation, shows you're actively trying to be clear, which is great.
Okay, let's get into transition words. The video calls them the glue, holding ideas together. Makes sense. Makes you sound more organized, more advanced.
And the way it categorizes them is super helpful for learning. Cause and effect first.
Ranging from formal, like consequently, hence,
Down to more everyday ones like so, since, because. And it reminds you to match the formality to the situation. Crucial point.
then chronology showing order, firstly, then maybe next, afterwards, and wrapping up with finally, lastly. The key is variety, right? Don't just say first, second, third.
Exactly. Mix it up. For contrast, you've got however, although, though, and just plain but. Again, different levels of formality.
And for adding points. Furthermore, moreover, down to also and.
When you want to speak generally, there are great phrases like in general, generally speaking, by and large, most of the time.
Giving examples. For example, for instance, easy enough.
For emphasis. In fact, as a matter of fact, adds a bit of punch.
And then wrapping up conclusions. Lots of options here too. Formal in conclusion, to summarize, down to informal, so to wrap up, all in all.
And what's really good is how it shows you using them together, building a more complex point by linking different types.
Yeah, like start general, add contrast, give an example, explain why, add another point. It encourages you to actually use them actively.
Exactly. That's the key active use.
Okay, next up, opinion words. Also crucial for sounding natural and fluent, not just stating facts. And again, the categories help.
Totally. First, sharing your opinion. Lots of choices. In my opinion, as far as I'm concerned, from my perspective.
Even stronger ones like I strongly believe, or there's no doubt in my mind that. The advice to pick a few favorites to start with seems smart. Don't try to memorize all of them at once.
Good advice. Then agreeing. Simple. I agree. I think so too. Up to more enthusiastic ones.
Absolutely. Definitely. I couldn't agree more. Or that idiom, you hit the nail on the head.
Nice one. And for agreeing with a negative statement, like, I don't think that's right.
Neither do I. Very useful little phrase.
Then disagreeing. This is handled really well. It gives direct options, but also emphasizes softer ways.
Right, like, I'm afraid I disagree, or acknowledging their point first. I see where you're coming from, but. Or, I respect your opinion, but. Much more polite sometimes.
Definitely smoother in many situations. Then there's sharing a general opinion, things people often say.
It's said that. It's believed that. Most people agree that.
Useful for introducing common ideas before you maybe agree or disagree with them yourself, using the phrases we just talked about.
And finally, asking for someone else's opinion. So important for conversation.
Essential. From simple, what do you think, or do you agree, to what's your take on it, or what are your thoughts?
Or even asking about their experience. Has that been your experience? How do you see the situation? Loads of options to keep the conversation flowing.
It's a really comprehensive toolkit for opinions, and the suggestion to practice in the comments is great immediate application.
Okay, now this next bit I found fascinating. Transforming a basic daily routine description into something advanced, like C1 level. It's like a language makeover show.
Huh. It really is. It takes Mark's routine and breaks down the specific vocabulary and grammar that make it sound so much more sophisticated.
So instead of I wake up at 6:30, it's the alarm rings at 6:30 a.m. signaling, using that present participle, signaling, and adding with precision.
Yeah, and instead of he organizes his morning, it's with precision he orchestrates the morning routine ensuring. Orchestrates is such a better verb there, more evocative.
And the senses, not just the smell of coffee, but the aroma of coffee. Aroma feels nicer, more positive.
Definitely. And we see more of those ing forms used as modifiers, like reviewing his schedule, preparing for the day, or leading his team, motivating them.
Right, and more advanced vocabulary pops up everywhere. Mark transitions into his managerial role, not just starts his job.
Back-to-back Zoom meetings instead of just many meetings. Paints a clearer picture of the intensity.
And Mark excels in conveying intricate ideas, so much stronger than he's good at communicating complex ideas.
Absolutely. Even the end of the day gets upgraded as the workday concludes, not ends, and idioms like races against the clock.
Habits become integral parts of their routine, not just important. Sounds more significant.
And describing the evening, cherishes the moments of connection instead of just enjoys time. Reunites in collective activities instead of spends quality time.
And instead of a walk, it's a stroll. And the video points out those complex sentences using as to connect clauses.
Right. As the clock inches towards bedtime, great phrasing, Mark carves out a brief period for personal reflection. Carves out suggests making special time for it.
Even getting into bed. Not gets into bed, but slips into his comfortable bed and savors the tranquility that descends upon his home.
Wow. It's beautifully descriptive. The contrast really shows the impact of richer vocabulary and more varied sentence structures. It's a great model for you, the learner, to aim for.
Definitely something to study and try to adapt. Okay, next, verb tenses. This is super practical. The video claims just 5 tenses make up over 96% of native speech. Is that right?
That's the figure cited, and it makes a lot of sense. Focusing on these 5 gives you massive coverage.
So what are they?
Okay, number 1 by far is present simple, over 57%. Used for routines, habits, facts, feelings, schedules.
Got it. Basic structure, add eds for he, she. Add verbs like always, often, sometimes.
Exactly. Number 2, past simple, almost 20%, for completed actions at a specific past time. Keywords, yesterday, last week, in 2010, ago.
Simple past tense, regular ed, or irregular verbs. Check.
Number 3, future simple using will, about 8.5%. For predictions based on opinion, spontaneous decisions, promises, offers, often used with those opinion words we talked about.
Right. I think it will rain.
Yep. Number 4, present perfect, about 6%. Structure is have or has, plus the past participle.
Okay, uses.
Completed past action with a present result, life experience within an unfinished time, have you ever, and actions started in the past, continuing now, but remember, mainly with live work study for that last one.
And the big rule, no specific past time. Can't say, I have finished it yesterday.
Exactly. Use past simple for that. I finished it yesterday. Crucial difference.
Okay, and number 5.
Present continuous, just over 5%. Amisar plus verbing for actions happening right now or planned future actions.
Like, I am speaking now, or I am meeting her tomorrow.
Perfect. The video mentions native speakers sometimes use it with always for annoying habits, like he's always losing his keys, but advises learners maybe stick to present simple with always for clarity.
Okay, good tip. So mastering these 5 is really the core of fluency.
It provides a very strong foundation, absolutely.
But the final section, really practical tips for thinking and speaking in English simultaneously. Tip 1, surround yourself with English.
Immerse your environment. Sticky notes on objects, English to-do lists, change your phone language. constant exposure.
Tip 2. Use that wasted time. Working out, showering, commuting.
Turn it into productive time by actively thinking in English. Narrate what you're doing, plan your day in English in your head.
Tip 3. Make simple observations. Look around, describe what you see in English. Mindfulness meets language practice.
Yeah, at the park. There's a dog, the dog is running. Simple stuff.
Tip 4 builds on that. Add complexity. Don't just stop at simple sentences. Add adjectives, adverbs, opinions.
The dog is running quickly. In my opinion, it looks very happy. Start simple, then layer it.
Tip 5. Use images. Find pictures online, practice describing them simple first, then complex. Good short exercise.
5 or 10 minutes a day really helps build that descriptive muscle.
Tip 6. Speak out loud. Verbalize those thoughts and observations, even if you're alone.
Builds confidence in actually producing the language. Pretend you're on the phone if you feel silly.
Good idea. Tip 7. A daily recap. Summarize your day in English.
Think about it, speak it, or journal it. What did you do? Past tense. What was the best part? What are you grateful for? What could be better? Plan for tomorrow. Future tense. Great practice.
Uses all the skills. 10 minutes before bed, maybe journaling.
Excellent habit. And the final tip, number 8. Crucial.
Be patient.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It takes time. Aim for that 1% improvement daily. It adds up massively over a year. Don't expect miracles overnight, but trust the process. Consistency is key.
Noticeable results after 30 days, good after 60, great after 90. It builds.
Precisely. Commitment pays off.
So, wrapping up our deep dive for you, the learner. We've covered a lot. Vocabulary for common topics using transition and opinion words effectively.
Looked at transforming simple descriptions into advanced ones, drilled down on those 5 key verb tenses, and shared really practical tips for thinking and speaking in English.
We really hope this gives you some clear, actionable strategies to work with to help you move beyond those basic phrases and sound more confident, more fluent, more you in English.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe take a moment now to think about just 1 or 2 things from this discussion that really click for you. How could you start using them, like today or tomorrow?
Good call. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Language learning is huge, right? But thinking about all this, what's one small, consistent action you can commit to starting today that will move you closer to your long-term fluency goals?
That's a great question to ponder. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Ever get that little flutter of nerves right before you need to speak English, maybe in a test or meeting someone new, and you're just not quite sure how to confidently get the ball rolling?
Yeah, that moment of hesitation.
Exactly. Well, today on the deep dive, we're zeroing in on that exact feeling. We've taken a really close look at some insightful information about how high-level English speakers nail their opening lines, specifically in the IELTS speaking test. Think of this as like your fast track to sounding more fluent and, in command right from the very first words you speak.
Definitely. And for this session, we've dug into an analysis from the IELTS Advantage YouTube channel. They've done some really great work breaking down lots of high-scoring speaking performances. They pinpointed the opening strategies that consistently seem to work best for different kinds of questions.
Right. And our goal today for you, the listener, is really to pull out the most practical, the most immediately useful techniques, stuff to help you feel more ready and, less overwhelmed when you're facing spoken English questions.
Yeah, finding those little aha moments.
Exactly. The ones that just make it clear how to approach different conversational situations with confidence.
So to give you a clear picture of what we'll cover, we're going to explore several common types of questions, the ones you're pretty likely to run into.
Okay.
Things like questions about your preferences, your opinions, talking about past experiences, hypothetical scenarios.
Those tricky ones.
Yeah, and those nuanced it depends questions too. Plus simpler personal questions, deeper analytical ones, and how to bring in personal examples effectively. And for each type, we'll highlight the best ways to kick off your response, all based on this detailed analysis we looked at.
Okay, sounds great. Let's dive in then. First up, preferences. The sort of question, right? Like, do you prefer to study in the morning or at night?
Classic.
Yeah. And the analysis looked at different ways people start answering this. Turns out some ways are much more common among the high scorers. Things like just, yes, definitely, or actually my preference changes, or even I used to prefer. They weren't the top strategies.
No. And what's really fascinating here, a key insight, is that the most effective way, used by a pretty significant chunk, 37% of those high-scoring candidates, is a direct modal statement. So phrases like, I'd say I generally prefer mornings simply because.
Using would or I'd rather.
Exactly. I'd rather study in the morning because.
Yeah.
Using those modal verbs like would, could, might right at the start.
That's interesting. Why do you think that specific strategy works so well? Why is it so common?
Well, it seems starting with that direct modal statement, it just gives immediate clarity. It also kind of projects confidence, decisiveness,
Right.
which examiners probably see as signs of, higher proficiency.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So connecting it to the bigger picture for preferences, they like a direct answer than the reason?
Pretty much. So the key takeaway for you listening is start by clearly stating your preference, maybe using I'd say or I'd rather, and then explain why.
Got it. Okay, let's move on to opinions then. A typical question might be something like, do you think children should learn to cook at school? And again, like with preferences, there were ways people started that just weren't as common among the top performers, like a really plain, yes, I completely agree.
Right. What seems key for opinion questions is using natural fillers first, followed by a really clear statement of your view. The analysis found beginnings like, well, in my opinion, it depends on, or actually, I think children should definitely learn. So those were very common.
Okay, so well or actually.
Yeah.
What's the thinking there? Why add the filler?
I think it just makes the response sound more like a natural conversation, less like you're reading a prepared script.
Yeah.
That little, well, actually, it gives you just a tiny pause, maybe to gather your thoughts before you state your opinion directly.
That's a good point. So those little conversational bits make it smoother or natural.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
The takeaway here is to get comfortable using words like, well, actually, or similar things just to lead into your opinion statement.
Okay. Next up, talking about past experiences. Imagine being asked, describe a time when you traveled somewhere new. Now, some people might start off with a general comment about travel, maybe. But the high-level speakers in this analysis, they tended to be more direct.
Yeah, what's really striking here is the strong tendency, we're talking over 60% of candidates at band 7 and above, to start with a direct recall statement.
Okay, like what?
Phrases like, well, I remember last year I visited, or it happened when I went to, or even, back in 2019 I had the opportunity to.
Okay. That makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It immediately signals you're about to tell a specific story from the past. And it tells the examiner you're probably going to use the right tense, the past tense.
Exactly. Starting with, I remember, or it happened when, you're directly answering, setting the scene for a story, and showing you've got control over past tense grammar. So the listener takeaway. When asked about a past experience, start with a phrase that clearly signals you're recalling something specific.
Okay. Let's talk hypothetical questions now. Thinking about something like, if you could live in any city, where would you choose?
The if questions.
Yeah. And apparently there were some less effective, maybe even grammatically wrong ways people started these, like, I definitely live in London or I will live.
Right, missing the hypothetical nature. The clear trend here, used by about 55% of high-level speakers, was using would plus a verb. That clearly shows you're talking about an imaginary situation.
So, like, I would probably choose London because...
Exactly. Or, I would definitely opt for a city with, using would correctly.
And why is getting that grammar right in the opening so crucial here?
Well, it immediately shows your control over the language, right? Avoids any confusion about whether you're talking real or imaginary. Accuracy matters.
Right. Accuracy and appropriateness for the context.
Yeah.
Key parts of communication.
Absolutely. So the listener takeaway for hypotheticals is pretty straightforward. Make sure you use would correctly to signal you're talking about something unreal or imagined.
Okay. Now for those sometimes tricky, it depends questions. The ones where there isn't really a single right answer, you need to show you can see different sides.
Yeah, the balanced view questions. What's interesting is how the top speakers signal that balance right away. While some might just jump to one viewpoint, the analysis found phrases like, well, it depends on the person, because were used by about 31% of the top scorers.
Oh, I can see why that works. It immediately tells the examiner, okay, this person isn't going to give a simple answer. They're acknowledging complexity.
Exactly. It shows you can think critically, consider different angles. That's a valuable skill. And like the analysis pointed out, you can then expand on that, explore the different sides, maybe offer your own view within that. Using if can also help develop these answers.
Right.
So the takeaway for it depends questions. Use phrases like it depends to show you see multiple sides and then go on to explain those different perspectives.
Okay. Let's switch gears a bit to simpler part one questions. Those more personal, direct ones like, where do you live?
The basics.
You might feel tempted to launch into a long, detailed story, but the analysis suggests something different.
Yeah, what's really noteworthy here is the emphasis on directness. Over 65%, a big majority of Band 8 and 9 students, kept their Part 1 answers simple, straightforward.
So just like C.
Something like, I live in Manchester, and it's quite a vibrant city. Or, I study in London, which I find really stimulating. Direct answer first, maybe a little extra detail after.
So no need to try and overcomplicate the opening for these basic personal things.
Exactly. Examiners actually appreciate that clarity and conciseness for these questions. Trying to sound too elaborate in Part 1 can actually come across as unnatural.
Or like you're trying too hard.
Yeah, maybe trying to overcompensate. So the listener takeaway is clear. Simple personal questions. Give it a direct answer first. Start clear. You can add a bit more, but start direct.
Okay. Now let's move to the deeper Part 3 questions, the more analytical ones, like, why do some people choose to live in cities rather than rural areas? This needs a more thought-out response, right?
Absolutely. And the way high-level speakers often begin reflects that need for more thought. The analysis found that using short bridging phrases works well. Phrases that acknowledge the question's depth, followed by an opinion or explanation.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Like, that's an interesting question. I think some people enjoy the convenience. Or, that's a complex issue. Perhaps one reason is this approach was seen in about 46% of the top scoring Part 3 responses.
That makes a lot of sense. It signals you've actually, processed the question, not just jumping in. Probably gives you a second to think, too.
It definitely does. It shows the examiner you understand it needs more analysis. So the takeaway for these complex questions: start by briefly acknowledging the complexity. That's interesting. That's complex, before you offer your reasoned explanation.
Right. What about when you need to give a personal example? Say, you're asked, can you give an example of when you learned something new? How do the top speakers usually lead into those?
The analysis suggests that simple, direct lead-ins are the most common. Things like, certainly, for example, last year I. Or, sure, a good example of that would be when I. These kinds of openings were used by around 39% of successful speakers, often with little bridging words like sure or certainly.
It sounds very natural, doesn't it? Almost like how you'd start telling a story to a friend. Didn't the source mention a coffee shop analogy? Like, how would you start telling a story in a casual chat?
Exactly that. You wouldn't just launch into all the details immediately. You'd probably use a little bridge like, oh yeah, actually, or let me think. Yes, for example.
Yeah.
So the listener takeaway is pretty simple. Use a natural bridging phrase, maybe for example or something similar, just to smoothly introduce your personal stories.
Okay. And finally, the big one. What should you do if you get a question and you honestly just don't know much about the topic? It feels really tempting sometimes to just say, I have no idea.
Yeah, it does. But the analysis is quite clear. Directly refusing or just saying, I have no idea, is generally not the best move. It can unfortunately give the examiner the impression that your overall English ability might be a bit limited.
Okay, so what's a better approach then?
Yeah.
If you're genuinely stuck on the topic?
Well, the analysis showed that a huge majority, 90% of high-scoring candidates actually attempt an answer, even if they're unsure.
How do they do that?
They use phrases that signal uncertainty but still offer something, like, I'm not entirely sure, but if I had to guess, or, it might depend on, perhaps my understanding is.
So you acknowledge you're not an expert, but you still try.
Exactly. It shows you have enough English skill to speculate, to explain your thinking, even if your knowledge on that specific topic is limited. The really crucial takeaway here for you, the listener, is even if you feel uncertain, try to offer something. An opinion, a guess. Use phrases that show you're speculating. Remember, it's primarily a test of your communication skills in English, not necessarily a test of your expert knowledge on every possible subject under the sun.
Okay, so if we boil it all down, the main idea here isn't about finding one magic phrase for everything, is it?
Not at all.
It's more about choosing an opening that fits the question type, being accurate with grammar, and sounding natural like you're actually having a conversation.
That sums it up perfectly. Appropriateness, accuracy, and naturalness. Those are the keys.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to sort of mull over. Think about how consciously trying out just one or two of these opening strategies could actually affect your confidence, maybe the whole flow of your next English conversation.
Yeah, what kind of little breakthroughs, those aha moments, might you have just by changing how you start?
Maybe start paying attention to how proficient English speakers begin their responses, in podcasts, shows, conversations you hear.
Good idea. You'll likely start spotting some of these effective patterns we've talked about.
Well, thank you for taking this deep dive with us today.
My pleasure.
We really hope these insights give you a valuable, maybe even a bit of a shortcut to feeling more confident and communicating more effectively.